Hello, and welcome back to the Michigan State University Wealth Management Association podcast. This week we have Steve Lane from Carrera Capital Advisors joining us. We hope you enjoy.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Michigan State Wealth Management Association podcast. My name is Lefty Theodoru, and today I'm here with Steve Lane of Carrera Capital Advisors.
Hi, Lefty. Appreciate you having me on today, and also the MSU Wealth Management Department as well. I'm excited, and it's an honor.
Thank you. Thanks again for being here. So getting right into it, can you just tell us about your current role today and where you are?
Yep. So currently, I'm a private wealth advisor with Carrera Capital Advisors, and Carrera was started in 2024 as an independent, fee-based only RIA firm, and here work with clients at varied levels, but mostly people in retirement or very close to it, within probably 5 years of retirement, and help them with their various planning needs, wealth management, insurance planning, tax planning, estate planning, things like that.
Awesome. And did you always know that you wanted to work in wealth management? And if not, what really brought you into it?
Definitely, growing up, I didn't know I wanted to do this, but I've always been interested in money and stocks. I actually had a newspaper route at, about 12 years old to 14, making $40, $50 a week, which in today's dollars is over $100 a week, for a 12-year-old. I actually bought stocks, as a child. And back then you had to look up the ticker symbols in the newspaper. Couldn't just go check it on the internet. So that was something I did almost daily, but having that job really formed a foundation for, being responsible. You deliver papers 365 days a year. If I went on vacation, I had to find somebody to do it for me. So that really, kind of set the groundwork for just being hardworking and diligent. And, then back in high school, my family and I took a trip to Myrtle Beach, and I remember my parents went to a timeshare presentation, and I didn't want them to go, but they were getting $100 or something like that dollars for doing it. And, this person's telling them how the cost of a hotel is going to go from $100 to $600, a night 10 years from now, and they, should buy this timeshare. And the numbers didn't add up, and I kept telling them not to, and they did it anyways. But so now they've made it work out, but for probably the first 20 years, I don't think they used it at all. So, kind of a few of those different things, I think, kind of laid the groundwork that I wanted to, deal with numbers, finances, and then, kind of came into this as I started at MSU.
Awesome. Yeah. So I want to transition here into talking about, I know that you worked at Northwestern Mutual as well, and you were there for a very long time. And my next question is talking about students my age as we enter graduation and we start looking for jobs. We hear about things like firm culture and, feeling like, you can walk into work and it's like another home for you. You're comfortable, you're excited to go there and things like that. Can you talk about navigating that process for like a student my age and how you realized that Carrera was the right spot for you and, why you chose it?
Yep. So great question. I think the reason why I thought Carrera was the right fit for me, and that was a transition again, after a 20 plus year time at Northwestern Mutual, that's how I met Marty Schmidt, who's one of the founders of Carrera, and Jake Raskin, Keith Nickel actually were at Northwestern as well. And, Marty was a few years from retirement and really looking at how, when he stepped away or retired eventually, we could continue his vision and, the practice in a way that, we were operating at a very high level. So they all connected, and we formed they formed Carrera Capital Advisors, and then, shortly after that went to an independent RIA, just was a better fit, we thought, long-term for our vision. And, it's kind of where I think the industry is going as a whole, for the younger people. But I think there's a lot of different ways that you could go. There's the bank route where, maybe they help you get clients through the bank, but there's going to be some, ceiling, their income wise, and the clients won't be yours more than likely, versus kind of starting things off on your own, or maybe joining a team, which, someone joining Carrera now right out of school, they'd be joining a team. So we kind of already have a platform and a roadmap, so to speak, the marketing, things like that. And, you just come in and we help train and, get you up to speed on things. So I think there's a lot of different ways it can go. And one thing I would just say is that if, the first way or even the second option doesn't work for you, or you're told you're not a fit, that doesn't mean that you won't be very successful, because, I listened to a few of these podcasts, before I came on today, and, sometimes you got to move around to find out where you're most valued. And I think that's the key is, finding based on your skill set where you'll be valuable, and, might not always be the first place you start at. So.
Yeah. And I want to add in something here. What are some good traits that advisors have, and typically, young advisors, and things that we can practice to just better ourselves in this industry,
Yeah. I think the main attributes that I think an advisor is, first off, high integrity, high character. You're dealing with people's life savings, their money. They have to have full trust in you. They're sharing things that they probably aren't sharing with barely anybody else that they know at times. So I think you need to be thoughtful, knowledgeable, a very good listener, unselfish, almost, altruistic, so to speak, and other focused, I think is huge, where, it's not about you, it's about them. And that's how you want to be thinking, through the whole process in meetings with clients. So I think those are main attributes that, a good advisor would have.
Yeah. And I want to transition here because we're talking about clients already, which is great. And it's a very big aspect of what we do. So I want to get your thoughts on client relationships, and thinking about your best client relationships. What are some things that they all have in common, or what are some things that you do for those people?
Yep. So I think, the clients that we can best help are going to be coachable and open-minded. They can be really smart, but, I think being coachable is huge. You can be the best player on a team. And if, you're not coachable at some point, you're going to be a detriment to yourself and not reaching your full potential, or you're going to be a detriment to your team, to your coach, to, the school, whatever it might be. So I think being coachable is huge. And, also just finding people that are living below their means. I know that's hard to do these days, but, at any income level, and I have clients, at varied income levels, is knowing, that you need to spend less than you're bringing in, generally speaking, to be able to save. So I think the earlier you start that, so right out of school, we work with a lot of clients, adult children, once they get out of college, or even when they're still in high school, with Roth IRAs, things like that. But is when you have the least amount of bills and expenses is the best time to start thinking about that. So before you go buy that brand new car, before you put a down payment on a brand new house, how is this going to affect me? Thinking about those things, I think, is huge, because once you add those on, it's very hard when someone comes to us, spending more than they make, to really whittle that down very quickly. If they've already got a house that they overspent on, and, too many expenses, for them to start whittling them down is usually challenging. It's a lot easier to start early and be thinking about that from day one.
What's it like having those tough conversations with clients sometimes, who maybe they have a spending habit that isn't good for them, and you got to try to communicate that to them, but they may not like that answer that you give them? How do you go about that?
Yeah. So I think you got to be, tactful, right? And go about it the right way. But, very recently had a similar situation where someone was going to make a very big purchase on windows and doors, and, the 6-figure range. And, based on finances, the value of their house, I wasn't sure that made sense. And, after talking through it and really challenging them, at one point they're like, we almost decided not to do it at all after our initial conversation. But, what I said was, I said, I have your best interest at heart, and, not that you can't do this, but what are the other things that are going to be affected that you have to be okay with for this to happen? So there's not always a clear, direct, right answer. There's always, a couple different options typically. And so it's kind of just talking through that with them. So what they valued and said was, that's, hey, we want you to be direct with us and honest. And that's what we're, paying you for. So they were very appreciative. And that's typically the response you get. But no, they are not easy conversations. And you get more, they're never easy, but you get more used to it as you have more of them.
Yeah, for sure. So you would say that just that honest communication is the most important thing in that relationship of just, keeping it real with them, telling them what you think, telling them you're doing it for them, even though they may not like the decision you're suggesting.
You got it.
So
100%.
So continuing to talk about the client side of things, what is something that clients misunderstand about financial planning, or maybe just working with you and your job, that it's important that they recognize that happens or that you have to do?
Yeah. One thing that comes to mind is that, people think there's always a specific answer. And, I'll pick on teachers or attorneys, engineers, possibly, who can get pretty technical. And, they always think there's just a clear, answer at the end of the day. And the reality is there's a lot of times, multiple ways to get to the same endpoint, or, there might be a good, better, or best way. And we talk through those. And then sometimes there's, multiple options that are, pretty equally good. And then sometimes the best option financially might not be the best choice for them because of the stress level, or it puts undue stress on them. So I think, just realizing that there's, not always a clear answer, and, people having to be okay with that when typically in their life, they're used to, having a logical, clear answer all the time. So I think that's one. And then the second is just that, that comes to mind is that you don't need to be rich to need a planner. So a lot of people, and when they're thinking about people that they might know that, could benefit from, talking with us, sometimes it's, oh, they have a lot of money, so they're probably all set. And the reality is those are the people that we can probably best help. But we can also help people just starting out too, that maybe need a roadmap or just some basic guidance to start. So I think, all people could benefit from some level of planning. It just might be, simpler or on a different level, but I think everybody can benefit from getting guidance.
Yeah, and I wanted to add on to that real quick. Do you notice any difference in maybe the way you go about it if you were working with a client who may not have as high of a net worth or something like that compared to higher net worth, ultra high net worth clients? Do you notice any difference in the way you need to go about things when you approach them?
Yeah, for sure. There's, sometimes a knowledge gap. So definitely, younger clients or clients with less assets might have less financial knowledge. So I think a great attribute of a good advisor is somebody that can be, whatever they need to be for the person they're in front of. So if I'm talking to an attorney who is very knowledgeable financially, I can speak at a higher level. And if I'm talking to someone who maybe just inherited some money and this is kind of the first investments they've ever had, I really got to simplify it down a lot and be checking in periodically as we're talking to make sure that they're, tracking with what I'm saying. And I think that can get lost on a lot of people. One thing I hear from a lot of clients is, my old advisor talked over my head, or I never knew what they were saying. And I think that's a failure on the advisor's part to some degree, because, you can really simplify this if you need to at the most basic level. And then you can get into the weeds with people that you might need to do that with, periodically and get really technical. So I think that's very important. Great question, and good point to make that I think the best advisors are able to, talk in a lot of different ways that are going to reach different people.
Yeah, I think that is the main theme of today, communication at all levels, making sure you can communicate your ideas clearly, whether your client has basic financial knowledge or, they're very smart in it. So,
Yep.
So this next question I want to ask here is, looking back on your career as an advisor, do you have a time where something didn't go as planned or you made a mistake? And what did you learn from it?
Yeah. So I think probably going all the way back to 2008 would be a time where it was challenging, where I was an advisor on my own at that point at Northwestern Mutual, and getting married at the end of the year to my wife now, Nicole, and doing mentoring, doing partly in management, and trying to run a business. And I think I kind of spread myself too thin, and probably was a little too nice at that time. I've learned from that, but with my time, and probably didn't use it as wisely as I should have, and didn't hit some numbers that I knew that I needed to, but thought that it was going to be okay, and then it turned out that I had to make a change at that point, and that's what moved me to talking to Marty Schmidt at Northwestern, and he was a private wealth advisor there, and that kind of put me on a completely different path than actually I was on, and changed my life. So it maybe happened for some really good reasons that I didn't know at the time, but I would say that would be an answer to that.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's good. And that's good that you bounced back from that, and you've settled now and you feel like you have a great career ahead of you now with Carrera Capital.
For sure.
So my last question here is just talking about advice for students my age. What is some advice you can give to young and upcoming advisors at Michigan State who want to enter this industry one day?
Yeah, great question. And hopefully this might be the most meaningful, I think, question to spend some time on, especially for young people like yourself that are, either on this track or considering it, is that, it really just takes time. It's like starting a small business in a lot of cases. You might go somewhere where you get a large amount of clients, clientele right away. But in most cases, people are building slowly. That takes time. There's going to be challenges, setbacks, and I just, always, refuse to give up or quit. And that's always really worked well for me. So, when I look at this career, the flexibility, I mean, for the most part, I don't want to say banking hours, but when you first start, you might work a lot more than that. But there's long-term flexibility, family life balance that we have at Carrera. You meet a lot of great people. A lot of them I golf with, spend time with, go to lunch with outside of work. They become friends, which is awesome. And when I look at some facts, and I look these up, but the average age of an advisor right now is 56, which is almost 10 years older than me still. And I've been doing this 25 years. So when you look at that, 20% of advisors are less than 5 years from retiring, 40% are less than 10 years. Most of these lack any formal transition plan of their clientele. So that I think is just a huge opportunity. I think under 10%, 6 to 10% of advisors are under 30. And there's going to be this huge transition of wealth coming, 60 to 100 trillion approximately by the mid 2040s, and about 2 trillion annually is being transferred already. And it'll be up to 5 trillion a year by 2040. And most of this is going to go to Gen X, millennials, and the younger generations. This is just a tremendous opportunity. So if I'm you, or any people listening to this or considering this track, there's so many options now, and I just think there's a huge shortage of advisors as a whole, and a huge shortage of younger advisors, that I can't think of a better opportunity out there right now, than for this career than now.
Yeah, that's something very common I hear. And, even the guest speakers who come and talk at our meetings here at Michigan State, is that it's a great opportunity for us younger advisors. We're coming into something that really needs us.
Yep.
Just the whole industry needing youth in general is something really great. And that's what I got inspired, and that's why I'm doing this. I'm super excited to get into it.
Yeah. And lastly, I mean, having a mentor, I think, is huge too. So there's a lot of people willing to give back, myself included. And, I know a lot of people helped me along the way, and most of my language, most of what I do, I learned from other people. I didn't make up on my own. So, learning from others. People want to help. Successful people want to help other people. So, take advantage of that. Find someone that's a fit for you. Find mentors that you can talk to, bounce ideas off of, and grow with. And I think that would be a huge help for younger advisors. And I've seen the benefits myself and through helping others of what that does. And I've talked a couple times now what Marty's done for me. So just a huge benefit, and there's people willing to help.
That's great to hear. And that will wrap up all our questions. So thank you so much. It has been a great episode, and we really appreciate you coming here today.
Thanks, Lefty. I appreciate it.
If you enjoyed this discussion, please like and share the podcast on Apple and Spotify. The WMA podcast is part of Michigan State University's Wealth Management Association, a student organization whose goal is to inspire the next generation of financial advisors. Feel free to follow us on social media at MSU WMA and check out our website at msuwma.com. Anything heard on either the MSU WMA or Spartan Journal podcast is for educational purposes only and should not be considered as investment advice.